The new Honda CR-V is a big SUV you can have as a regular hybrid or a plug-in hybrid, which all sounds pretty desirable and on trend. And traditionally, the CR-V has been a big seller for the Japanese manufacturer. So, is this new model the best CR-V ever? Is it a stronger choice than all the competitors that it's up against? And is it really very fuel efficient? In this review, we're finding out. So we've had 6 generations of the CR-V, the first of which dates back to 1995, and it was kind of an early pioneer of those SUVs that were more focused on the road than off the road. This is the 6th generation car, and compared to the previous CR-V, it's had quite a big makeover inside and out. And as we mentioned earlier, it's now only available as a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid. Let's start by showing you the interior of this new CR-V. And if you like SUVs that have high up, lofty driving positions, then you will really get on with what you have inside the CR-V. It's very easy to get comfortable here. You get 8-way electrically adjustable seats as standard, and lots of things about this driving position are really impressive. You get a 10.2-inch fully digital driver display here. You can also have a head-up display if you go for everything above the entry-level trim. And look at these buttons and dials here. They are very nice and simple to use if you want to adjust the temperature or the fan speed. And that's not something that you can take for granted with new cars, because very often these controls are buried within a touchscreen infotainment system, which is very difficult and more complicated and distracting to use while you're driving than what you have here. Plus, these feel and sound very nice. Visibility is also great. You can see very easily right down to the nose of the car. You've also got very tall windows up front and behind you as well to give you great visibility no matter where you're looking in the CR-V. Plus, every version of this car gets front and rear sensors as standard, as well as a reversing camera. And if you go for everything above the entry-level trim, you also get a 360-degree camera, which you can handily trigger using this button on the end of the stalk there. Those higher trim levels also have 4 extra sensors down the side of the car for even more helpful beeps when you're parking the CR-V. No matter which version of this car you go for, you will get a 9-inch touchscreen infotainment system up here on the dashboard. Now, this is the same setup that you get on the Civic, and it's kind of fine. You get smartphone mirroring as standard, which of course is the most important thing. There are also some physical buttons here, and these shortcut buttons on the touchscreen itself are customizable, which is very handy. But the resolution of the screen isn't really that impressive, and it just generally looks a bit dated as well. Anyway, general quality in here is, for the most part, pretty good. There are nice touches like this honeycomb dashboard here. All the stalks and dials feel like really good quality, as we mentioned earlier, especially these climate control buttons and dials down here. But there are also some cheaper feeling materials around, like around the glove box, and this slab of plastic down here isn't particularly appealing. Now, when you consider that this can be a pretty expensive car and might be compared to interiors from the Land Rover Discovery Sport, the Lexus NX, even the Mazda CX-5, they all do feel more plush than what you get in here. It's not that this feels very cheap, but given the whopping great big price tag which it gets, and we'll go into more detail about that later, aspects of the interior are a little disappointing. But from a practicality point of view, there's lots of good things in here. So you've got this big, wide, nicely cushioned, well-positioned armrest here. By the way, the armrest up here, also very nicely cushioned and comfortable for your arm. Under this, you've got a big storage compartment with this handy tray, which you can put in one of 2 positions. In front of that, you've got a shallow cubby with 2 cup holders in front of that, and then a spot for your wireless phone charging here, which you get as standard. And it's rubberized, so your phone won't be sliding around if you go around a corner. And there's also an inbuilt fan to help keep your phone cool. So, given the price tag, aspects of this interior are a bit disappointing, but overall, there's a lot to like up front in the CR-V. Now, the CR-V is a very big SUV. It has a large footprint on the road, and the doors back here are also very big, and they open very wide, so it's really easy to get into the back, and it's very easy to load things in here as well. And once you are in these rear seats, legroom is very generous. There's lots of it, even if you're a tall adult. There's also a good amount of space for your feet under the seat in front of you. There's hardly any lump in the floor, which again makes it feel quite open down here. And as we mentioned earlier, you've got nice big windows that let in a lot of light. It's not perfect back here though, because when it comes to headroom, you can see when I sit up straight, I have got some room above my head here, but directly in front of me is this bulge in the ceiling. Now this is where the roller blind for the sunroof is, and it is in your vision and does make it feel quite claustrophobic, even if you do have some space above you here. And if you're sat in this middle seat, then it really does become quite a big problem, because you actually do run out of headroom and you have this bulge directly in front of your forehead. So it's not very comfortable sitting back here, to be honest, which is disappointing in a car as big as this. However, these rear seats do slide forwards and backwards as standard, so you can move them forwards if you want more space in the boot, or put them as far back as they'll go to increase the legroom for your rear passengers. And you can also recline them as well. So in total, you've got 8 different positions you can put them in. And you can see if you put it all the way back, then headroom really isn't a problem at all, because you're very laid back and relaxed. But this is a rather uncomfortable position for a very long time, and you might not want to be basically lying down on a long journey. So if you do have it in a more natural sitting position, then that is when headroom isn't quite as amazing as you might think it would be on a car as big as this. Even for an SUV, the CR-V's boot is massive. In total, we could fit 8 carry-on size suitcases into the back here, which for some context is the same as what you'll be able to fit in the back of a Volvo XC60, but the difference is 8 suitcases fit comfortably in the back of the CR-V with room to spare. In the XC60, it's much more of a squeeze. Now, something unusual about the CR-V is, as we said earlier, the fact you can buy it as a hybrid and a plug-in hybrid. And normally in that instance, the plug-in hybrid version of a car gets a smaller boot. But in the CR-V, it's actually the other way around. And that is because the battery is under the floor of the interior, whereas in the hybrid, it's under the floor of the boot. Anyway, the difference does look fairly significant on paper, but in both cars, we could still fit 8 carry-on size suitcases. So you're unlikely to notice a huge practical advantage of the boot in the plug-in hybrid. Anyway, you can see that the space that you're given back here is very big, and it's useful that there's no loading lip at the front, because it makes it very easy to throw stuff in and to get it out again. There's also some underfloor storage in this hybrid version, although you can see not really that much. A couple of disappointments in here though are the fact that the wheel arch intrusion is pretty noticeable on either side of the car. So if that wasn't there, obviously it would be more practical, you'd have a bigger space. And you can see there's this kind of ridge up to where the rear seats are at the back, so you don't have a perfectly flat boot floor. But still, it's a very big space. And if you want this to be even more practical and even bigger, then you can remove the parcel shelf. Unfortunately, there's nowhere to store it in the car itself. And then you can fold down the rear seats. Now these rear seats split fold 60-40, so in 2 chunks. Some other SUV alternatives do let you split fold the rear seats 40-20-40, meaning that each of the 3 rear seats can fold down individually, but you can't get that in the CR-V. You also don't have any helpful levers or anything like that in the boot to then pull and release the seats from when you're back there. There aren't even any tags or levers on top of the seat backs to fold them down while you're at the back. So it means if you do want the rear seats down, you've got to come round to this side door and use the levers at the seat base to throw them down yourself there. Let's talk about the trims now, and with the CR-V, it's relatively simple. If you go for a hybrid version of this car, there are 2 trims to choose from. And entry-level elegance, even though it's the entry-level version, comes with loads of equipment as standard. That includes 18-inch alloys, heated front seats, a heated steering wheel, wireless phone charging, dual-zone climate control, adaptive cruise control as well. And above that, you can have advanced trim, which adds heated rear seats, a head-up display, an upgraded sound system, and electric memory seats. If you go for a plug-in hybrid version of this car, there is just 1 trim level you can choose. It's advanced tech, and it sits above the other 2 trim levels, and it has everything we've mentioned so far, as well as some styling tweaks. We think elegance trim is the pick of the lineup because it definitely represents the best value for money. It's the entry-level version, but it gets loads of equipment as standard, and the price jump to the higher trim levels doesn't really seem that easy to recommend. You can't really choose many options at all, even if you do want them. Having said that, you'll want to add some metallic paint. The only other choice that you have really is if you want to fork out quite a lot of money for some different alloy wheel designs. But even if you do that, the alloys are still the same size as the ones that you get as standard. Now, if you've looked up the crash safety results for the CR-V, you might be a bit alarmed because it doesn't get the full 5-star rating that virtually all of its rivals have. Instead, it gets 4 stars, which by new SUV standards is really quite disappointing. However, if you look closer at those results, then you'll see with a safety pack added, the CR-V does get 5 stars. And in the UK, every CR-V sold will get that safety pack as standard. So you can rest assured that this is a safe car. On top of that, this should have a pretty good chance of being reliable as well, because Honda finished an excellent 6th place out of 32 manufacturers in our 2023 What Car Reliability Survey. This car is too new to have any specific reliability data for just yet, but you get a 3-year or 90,000 mile warranty as standard. If you want a better warranty from an even more reliable manufacturer, then check out a Hyundai or a Kia. Now, like the trims, it's a pretty simple choice when it comes to the engines, and it boils down to choosing between a hybrid or a plug-in hybrid. Whichever version you go for, you'll get a 2-litre 4-cylinder petrol engine with 181 brake horsepower, and in the regular hybrid, it's 4-wheel drive only. In the plug-in hybrid, it's front-wheel drive only. If you go for that plug-in version, you'll also get a much bigger battery at 17.7 kilowatt hours. And that is enough to give it an official pure electric range of up to 51 miles. But we did some real-world testing with that car and found out it's more likely to give you something like 37 miles in real-world conditions. Now that is pretty respectable by plug-in hybrid standards, but really that version of the CR-V is difficult to recommend. It could make sense if you're a company car driver in the UK paying benefit in kind tax, but really, the plug-in hybrid version of the CR-V is very expensive. So, for most people, the regular hybrid is definitely the pick of the lineup. And if you're wondering about fuel economy for this version of the CR-V, then we did another real-world test with that car and found out that it would achieve something like 38 miles per gallon in genuine real-world driving. And if you do most of your driving in town, where the electric motors can do more of the work, it could be even better than that. It's good that this is relatively frugal because it's not particularly cheap to buy. In fact, if you look at the list price of the CR-V, then it does seem rather expensive compared to mainstream rivals like the Citroën C5 Aircross, the Kia Sportage, and the VW Tiguan. In fact, the most expensive hybrid Sportage still costs less money than an entry-level CR-V. And yes, this will come with more equipment than an alternative rival in an equivalent trim level, but this is priced more in line with premium alternatives like the Volvo XC60, where competition is even more fierce and expectations are also that much higher. So this hybrid version is cheaper than the plug-in hybrid CR-V, but it's still quite a lot of money. Does this feel like an expensive car on the road? Well, the hybrid setup is smooth and quiet at low speeds. This also picks up really well off the line. But when you're getting up to motorway speeds, it can feel like you're dragging the car there a bit, and there's a lot of engine noise as well. So performance definitely tails off the quicker you go. And then when you're at motorway speeds at a cruise, the engine noise isn't really a problem, but there's a lot of wind and road noise in here. When it comes to the ride, if you go for the plug-in hybrid version of the CR-V, then you get adaptive suspension, and it certainly rides better than the regular hybrid version of this car, which we're in now. This just really struggles to settle down. It thumps over potholes, it isn't particularly comfortable over poorly surfaced roads, and really, yes, it does still strike a pretty good balance between comfort and control, but if you're comparing this with a Land Rover Discovery Sport or a Volvo XC60, they are definitely considerably more comfortable and refined. But this is reasonably good to drive on a twisty road for a big SUV. The steering is accurate, well weighted. There's still a fair amount of body lean though, so it's not like this is some Civic Type R on a B road. And when it comes to towing, by the way, in the plug-in hybrid, it has a specific towing mode, so it can pull up to 1,500 kilograms. But if you're in the regular hybrid, then it can only tow 750 kilograms, which isn't particularly good compared to the other SUVs that this is up against. So the CR-V has its weaknesses on the road, and it does look expensive compared to the competition, but it should prove to be relatively frugal. It comes with lots of equipment, and it's a practical choice as well. So if you're looking for a big electrified SUV, this is worth considering. Thanks very much for watching this review. If you want to see another one, then click up there, and make sure you subscribe to our channel to see all of our new car reviews as soon as they go live. And if you want to read our written review of the CR-V and get £2,000 off when you buy one, then click on that link to go to whatcar.com.